Welcome, everyone, for the Community Good Friday service. And we are partnering together with the Presbyterians, Lutherans, Salvation Army, and the Methodists. So it is a joy that we can come together and worship together. And I'd like to thank Pastor Susan from Lutheran Community Church, who headed this combined service. And so a lot of work that she put in to put this service together. And we did have a Zoom planning meeting where we all came together to put this worship together. So I hope this Good Friday service will be a meaningful experience to all of you. I also want to invite you to the Labyrinth Walk in the social hall. There is this beautiful sacred music quietly playing in the background where you can walk the labyrinth. How many of you are familiar with Labyrinth? Okay, great. Labyrinth, I actually saw the original Labyrinth at Chartres Cathedral, about an hour train ride from Paris, France. And the Chartres Cathedral is a 13th century, one of the most well-preserved Gothic church. And they have the original labyrinth there. And the labyrinth was created because it was sort of a thing to do if you're a devoted Christian, to make a pilgrimage to Jerusalem. But with the crusade and the crusade war that was raging, it was very dangerous. And so the labyrinth was created as a kind of substitute or a metaphor of going to the Holy Land. So that's what it is. So I hope you will take advantage and experience the transformative journey through the Labyrinth Walk. Each of you should have been given the nail. It's the bucket in the back. And this nail is a symbol of our betrayal of Christ when we don't live up to his teachings and his path. And so this is a reminder that how we betrayed Jesus in so many little ways and subtle ways, and a place for reflection and confession and redemptions. So with that said, I would like to invite you while you're sitting. We do it while standing, but we'll do it sitting, and it's just 3 cycles of breath. So I invite you to, with your arms, just as you go this way, breathe in through your nostrils, and breathe in as much as your lungs can take. And then from here, you hold it and then exhale through your mouth slowly. It should be twice as long in your outer breath. So slow, long, deep breath. So let's do that again. And you could do it with your eyes closed if you like. So inhale through your nostrils. Let your lungs expand and hold, and then exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale.
Good morning. I guess it's good afternoon now, isn't it? Pastors are used to saying good morning because of all our morning services. How many of you have been to a Good Friday service before with us? Okay, then you know the music and you know what we do. So we're going to begin with a call to worship, and this is a call and response, and just repeat after me every musical phrase that we do. Come, let us worship God. Come, let us worship God. Welcome everyone to the love of God. Ven adoremos, ven adoremos, todos bienvenidos al amor de Dios. Food for the hungry, homes for the homeless. Welcome everyone to the love of God. Tears for the grieving, hope for the children. Welcome everyone to the love of God. Ven adoremos, ven adoremos, todos bienvenidos al amor de Dios. Come, let us worship God. Come, let us worship God. Welcome everyone to the love of God. Al amor de Dios. To the love of God. Al amor de Dios. There is our God with arms spread wide in vulnerability, embracing the whole of our life in its every deathly reality. Gather in those outstretched arms all that we are in our humanness, all our failure, all our and guilty secrets, all our shame and responsibility for the wounding to death of the innocent in ourselves and in others. Ahí está Cristo, nuestro Dios. Nos paramos con maravilla silenciosa ante el poder de una vida tan misteriosa.
pray. On this day, we hardly dare to call you closer, O Christ. In our trembling humanity, we fear that we may have killed you. It is faith alone that brings our prayer for your presence among us.
The Holy Gospel according to St. Matthew, chapters 26 and 27. Glory to you, Lord. When Jesus had finished all these sayings, he said to his disciples,
You know that after 2 days the Passover is coming, and the man of heaven will be delivered up to be crucified.
Then the chief priests and the elders of the people gathered in the palace of the high priest, who was called Caiaphas, and took counsel together in order to arrest Jesus by stealth and kill him. But they said, Not during the feast, lest there be a tumult among the people. Now when Jesus was at Bethany, in the house of Simon the leper, a woman came up to him with an alabaster flask of very expensive ointment, and she poured it on his head as he sat at the table. But when the disciples saw it, they were indignant, saying, Why this waste? For this ointment might have been sold for a large sum and given to the poor. Jesus, aware of this, said to them,
Why do you trouble this woman? She has done a beautiful thing to me. For you always have the poor with you, but you will not always have me. In pouring this ointment on my body, she has done it to prepare me for burial. Truly, I say to you, whenever this gospel is preached in the whole world, what she has done will be told in memory of her.
the one of the 12, who was called Judas Iscariot, went to the chief priests and said,
What will you give me if I deliver Jesus to you?
and they paid him 30 pieces of silver. And from that moment, Judas sought an opportunity to betray him. Now, on the first day of the unleavened bread, the disciples came to Jesus, saying, Where will you have us
prepare for you?
Passover? And Jesus said,
Go into the city and say to a certain one, the teacher says, my time is at hand. I will keep the Passover at your house with my disciples.
And the disciples did as Jesus had directed them, and they prepared the Passover. When it was evening, he sat at the table with the 12 disciples. And as they were eating, he said,
Truly I say to you, one of you will betray me.
And they were very sorrowful and began to say to him, one after another, Is it I, Lord? And Jesus answered,
The one who has dipped his hand in the dish with me will betray me. The man of heaven goes as it is written of him. But woe to that person by whom the man of heaven is betrayed. It would have been better for that person never to have been born.
Judas, who betrayed him, said,
Isn't I, Master?
and Jesus said to him,
You have said so.
Now as they were eating, Jesus took bread and blessed and broke it and gave it to the disciples and said,
Take, eat. This is my body.
And he took a cup, and having given thanks, he gave it to them, saying,
Drink it, all of you, for this is my blood of the covenant, which is poured out for you, for many, for the forgiveness of sins. I tell you, I shall not drink again of this fruit of the vine until that day when I drink it new with you in the dominion of my Father. You will all fall away because of me this night. For it is written, I will strike the shepherd, and the sheep of the flock will be scattered. But after I am raised up, I will go before you to Galilee.
Peter declared to him,
Though they all fall away because of you, I will never fall away.
and Jesus said to him,
Truly I say to you, this very night, before the cock crows, you will deny me 3 times.
Peter said to him,
Even if I must die with you, I will not deny you.
And all the disciples said the same. Then Jesus went with them to a place called Gethsemane, and he said to his disciples,
"Sit here while I go yonder and pray."
And taking along Peter and the 2 sons of Zebedee, Jesus began to be sorrowful and troubled. Then he said to them,
"My soul is very sorrowful, even to death. Remain here and watch me."
And going a little further, he fell on his face and prayed,
"My Father, if it be possible, let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not as I will, but as you will."
And Jesus came to the disciples and found them sleeping, and he said to Peter,
"So could you not watch with me 1 hour? Watch and pray that you may not enter into temptation. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak."
Again, for the second time, Jesus went away and prayed,
"My Father, if this cannot pass unless I drink it, your will be done."
And again Jesus came and found them sleeping, for their eyes were heavy. So leaving them again, he went away and prayed for the 3rd time, saying the same words. Then Jesus came to the disciples and said to them,
"Are you still sleeping and taking your rest? Behold, the hour is at hand, and the man of heaven is betrayed into the hands of sinners. Rise, let us be going. See, my betrayal is at hand."
While he was still speaking, Judas came, one of the 12, and with him a great crowd with swords and clubs from the chief priests and the elders of the people. Now the betrayer had given them a sign, saying,
Whomever I shall kiss is the one. Seize him.
and he came up to Jesus at once and said,
Hail, Master.
and he kissed him. Jesus said to him,
"Friend, why are you here?"
Then they came up and laid hands on Jesus and seized him. And behold, one of those who were with Jesus stretched out his hand and drew his sword and struck the slave of the high priest and cut off his ear. Then Jesus said to him,
Put your sword back into its place, for all who take the sword will perish by the sword. Do you think that I cannot appeal to my Father, who will at once send me more than 12 legions of angels? But how then should the scripture be fulfilled, that it must be so?
At that hour, Jesus said to the crowds,
Have you come out as against a robber, with sword and clubs to capture me? Day after day I sat in the temple teaching, and you did not seize me. But all this has taken place, that the scriptures of the prophets might be fulfilled.
Then all the disciples forsook him and fled. Those who had seized him took him to Caiaphas, the high priest, where the scribes and the elders had gathered. But Peter followed him at a distance, as far as the courtyard of the high priest. And going inside, he sat with the guards to see the end. Now the chief priests and the whole council sought false testimony against Jesus, that they might put him to death. But they found none, though many false witnesses came forward. At last 2 came forward and said, "This man said, I am able to destroy the temple of God and to build it in 3 days." And the high priest stood up and said,
Have you no answer to make? What is it that these people testify against you?
But Jesus was silent, and the high priest said to him,
I adjure you by the living God, tell us if you are the Christ, the Son of God.
Jesus said to him,
You have said so. But I tell you, thereafter you will see the man of heaven seated at the right hand of power, and coming on the clouds of heaven.
Then the high priest tore his robes and said,
He has uttered blasphemy. Why do we still need witnesses? You've now heard his blasphemy. What is your judgment?
They answered, He deserves death. Then they spat in his face and struck him. And some slapped him, saying, Prophesy
To us, you Christ, who is that struck you?
Now Peter was sitting outside in the courtyard, and a maid came up to him and said,
You also were with Jesus the Galilean.
But he denied it before them all, saying,
I do not know what you mean.
And when he went out to the porch, another maid saw him, and she said to the bystanders,
This man was with Jesus of Nazareth.
and again he denied it with an oath.
I don't know the man.
After a little while, the bystanders came up and said to Peter, Certainly you are also one of them, for your accent betrays you. Then he began to invoke a curse on himself and to swear.
I do not know the man.
And immediately the cock crowed. And Peter remembered the saying of Jesus, Before the cock crows, you will deny me 3 times. And he went out and wept bitterly.
Forgive your people, O Lord. Forgive your people. Forgive them, O Lord. Perdona tu pueblo, Señor. Perdona tu pueblo, perdónale, Señor. Forgive your people, O Lord. Forgive your people, forgive them, O Lord. Perdona tu pueblo, Señor. Perdona tu pueblo, perdónale, Señor.
When morning came, all the chief priests and the elders of the people took counsel against Jesus to put him to death. And they bound him and led him away and delivered him to Pilate, the governor. When Judas, his betrayer, saw that Jesus was condemned, he repented and brought back the 30 pieces of silver to the chief priests and the elders, saying,
I have sinned in betraying innocent blood.
They said, What is it to us? See to it yourself. And throwing down the pieces of silver in the temple, he departed and went and hanged himself. But the chief priests, taking the pieces of silver, said, It is not lawful to put them into the treasury, since they are blood money. So they took counsel and bought with them the potter's field to bury strangers in. Therefore that field has been called the field of blood to this day. Then was fulfilled what had been spoken by the prophet Jeremiah, saying, And they took the 30 pieces of silver, the price of the one on whom a prize had been set by some of the Israelites, and they gave them for the potter's field, as the Lord directed me. Now Jesus stood before the governor, and the governor asked him,
Are you the king of the Jews?
But when Jesus was accused by the chief priests and the elders, he made no answer. Then Pilate said to him,
Do you not hear how many things they testify against you?
But Jesus gave Pilate no answer, not even to a single charge, so that the governor wondered greatly. Now at the feast, the governor was accustomed to release for the crowd any one prisoner whom they wanted. And they had then a notorious prisoner called Barabbas. So when they gathered, Pilate said to them,
Whom do you want me to release for you, Barabbas or Jesus, who is called Christ?
For Pilate knew that it was out of envy that they had delivered him up. Besides, while he was sitting on the judgment seat, his wife sent words to him, "Have nothing to do with that righteous man, for I have suffered much over him today in a dream." Now the chief priests and the elders persuaded the people to ask for Barabbas and destroy Jesus. The governor again said to them,
Which of the two do you want me to release for you?
and they said, "Barabbas." Pilate said to them,
Then what shall I do with Jesus, who is called Christ?
and they all said, "Let him be crucified." And Pilate said,
Why? What evil has he done?
but they shouted all the more, "Let him be crucified." So when Pilate saw that he was gaining nothing, but rather that a riot was beginning, he took water and washed his hands before the crowd, saying,
I am innocent of this man's blood. See to it yourselves.
and all the people answered, "His blood be on us and on our children." Then Pilate released for them Barabbas, and having scourged Jesus, delivered him to be crucified. Then the soldiers of the governor took Jesus into the praetorium, and they gathered the whole battalion before him. And they stripped him and put a scarlet robe upon him, and plaiting a crown of thorns, they put it on his head, and put a reed on his right hand. And kneeling before him, they mocked him, saying, "Hail, King of the Jews!" And they spat on him, and rook the reed, and struck him on the head. And when they had mocked him, they stripped him of the robe, and put his own clothes on him, and led him away to crucify him. As they went out, they came upon a Cyrenian named Simon by the name, whom they compelled to carry his cross. And when they came to the place called Golgotha, which means the place of a skull, they offered him wine to drink, mingled with gall. But when he tasted it, he would not drink it. And when they crucified him, they divided his garments among them by casting lots. Then they sat down and kept watch over him there. And over his head they put the charge against him, which read, "This is Jesus, the King of the Jews." Then 2 robbers were crucified with him, one on the right and one on the left. And those who passed by derided him, wagging their heads and saying, "You who would destroy the temple and build it in 3 days, save yourself. If you are the Son of God, come down from the cross." So also the chief priests with the scribes and elders mocked him, saying, and the robbers who were crucified with him also reviled him in the same way. Now from the 6th hour there was darkness all over the land until the 9th hour. And about the 9th hour Jesus cried out with a loud voice,
Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani. My God, why have you forsaken me?
And some of the bystanders hearing it, said, "He is calling Elijah." And one of them at once ran and took a sponge, filled it with vinegar, and put it on a reed, and gave it to him to drink. But the others said, "Wait, let us see whether Elijah will come to save him." And Jesus cried out again with a loud voice and yielded up his spirit. And behold, the curtain of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom, and the earth shook, and the rocks were split. The tombs also were opened, and many bodies of the saints who had fallen asleep were raised, and coming out of the tombs after Jesus' resurrection. And they went into the holy city and appeared to many. When the centurion and those who were with him, keeping watch over Jesus, saw the earthquake and what took place, they were filled with awe and said, "Truly, this was the Son of God."
Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. Cristo, recuérdame cuando vengas en tu reino. Cristo, recuérdame cuando vengas en tu reino. Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. Cristo, recuérdame cuando vengas en tu reino. Cristo, recuérdame cuando vengas en tu reino.
There were also many women there, looking on from afar, who had followed Jesus from Galilee, ministering to him, among whom were Mary Magdalene, and Mary the mother of James and Joseph, and the mother of the sons of Zebedee. When it was evening, there came a rich man from Arimathea, named Joseph, who also was a disciple of Jesus. He went to Pilate and asked for the body of Jesus. Then Pilate ordered it to be given to him. And Joseph took the body, wrapped it in a clean linen shroud, and laid it in his own new tomb, which he had hewn in the rock. And he rolled a great stone to the door of the tomb and departed. Mary Magdalene and the other Mary were there, sitting opposite of the sepulchre. The chief priests and the Pharisees gathered before Pilate and said, next day, that is, after the day of preparation, "Sir, remember how that impostor said while he was still alive, 'After 3 days I will rise again.' Therefore, order the sepulchre be made secure till the 3rd day, lest his disciples go and steal him away, and tell the people, 'He has risen from the dead,' and the last fraud will be worse than the first." Pilate said to them,
You have a guard of soldiers. Go, make it as secure as you can.
So they went and made the sepulchre secure by sealing the stone and setting a guard. The gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, O Christ.
Oh God, we can never simply stand and watch the events of Good Friday as though they are a story belonging to someone else in years gone by. We know with grief that we are there in your story. We are present, bringing with us all that was there long ago. We too betray you when things become hard or costly. For our every betrayal, forgive us, Jesus Christ. We too turn our faces away from those suffering injustices. For our every participation in injustice, forgive us, Jesus Christ. We too absolve ourselves from responsibility for the well-being of others. For our every denial of responsibility, forgive us, Jesus Christ. We too are part of the violence and abuse suffered by the innocent. For our every silence in the face of violence to others, forgive us, Jesus Christ. Death is dealt in the name of our nations. O God, death in war, death through need and starvation, and death through tyrants and oppression. For all death that is done in our name, forgive us, Jesus Christ. Even as he approaches his death, Christ cries out into the world that we are forgiven. Let us pause in silence to honor the amazing gift. We are forgiven. There was an infinite chasm between myself and God. And when I offered my confession, God crossed over and found me. This chant is called Inter-Abiding Chant, and it is from the scripture of the Gospel of John, where Jesus says, just as I abide in the Father, Father abides in me, and therefore abide in me as I abide in you. And so I'm going to sing the chant, and each line just follow after me until we are able to sing it. Jesus Christ, you are my Lord. You abide in me. So we'll sing that first three lines simultaneously. Jesus Christ, you are my Lord. You abide in me. Second verse. Jesus Christ, you are my Lord. And the third line is different. I abide in you. I abide in you. So we'll do the second verse simultaneously. Jesus Christ, you are my